Welcome to Commander Central, episode 169. And today we're going to be taking a look at listener Sam Neal's Ilharg the Raze-Boar Big Pig deck. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
Hey, Max. How you doing?
Good. We're in person.
We are for the first time in...
Like 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I had debated not doing a deck tech this week, but Rise of Skywalker is tonight, and we're going to go see it basically after this.
Exactly.
And Chris is here, just not on the show because he can't come down steps. So he's here in Max's townhouse upstairs watching The Mandalorian with Max's roommate.
Yes, that's what they're doing right now. And Chris has finished it, so he's just like, I'm just rewatching.
So I guess if we wanted, we could get him to yell hello down the stairs, but...
We'll put a picture on Twitter or something.
Yes, there we go. So he's here in spirit and I guess physically, just not actually recording tonight.
Yeah.
So this episode will be coming out right after the Christmas holidays. Are you actually going anywhere for this, or are you staying around town?
No, I'm staying in town. So we're recording the night on a Thursday, like normal. My brother and his family are coming up this weekend to celebrate with my dad. And then we have no plans Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, so it's just I can do whatever I want, go hang out with him for a little bit. But no, I'm not traveling this year.
I am going to my sister's Christmas Eve, she's like, 15 miles away.
Right.
I will go over to my in-laws on Christmas Day for the day, but that's, a 90-minute drive. That's not bad at all either. And we'll be home probably by shortly after dinner time, so that won't be too stressful in terms of traveling. So that's all I really have planned as well. So by the time this airs, so day after Christmas, I'll be already back from all of that and enjoying leftover Christmas cookies.
Yeah.
Who am I kidding? There'll be no cookies left over by the time that rolls around.
For the car ride.
There we go. Right, exactly. I actually remember in college one time going home for Christmas to my family's house, and my mom packing up a bag of leftover stuff, sending it back with me, and driving back from their house to college, and being like, I'm gonna save those cookies, but they did not make it. Not only did the cookies not make it back, she had packed up with some leftover food, so there was turkey, and I was taking chunks of turkey out of the bag off the passenger seat and eating that, and I have a mental image of myself actually eating cold stuffing out of a Ziploc baggie that she had packed in the car driving back from Christmas.
Wow. Okay, then. I've done that with cookies. I've gotten Christmas cookies from my mom.
But not cold stuffing and turkey?
No.
I did all of it. It was a meal unto itself. I remember doing that. The things we do when we're young. I guess as far as crazy youth stories, that's not one at all.
That's not one at all. No.
All right. I think, Max, you want to make a little announcement here because you're building a deck, or at least...
Well, sort of.
You're getting a deck built.
I am getting a deck built. So as our listeners know, I'm not much of a brewer.
You are not.
I tend to build one deck a year because I want it to stick around. I want to keep it forever.
Right.
So instead of coming up with something on my own, I have challenged all of our patron supporters in our chat.
Yes.
To build me my first deck of 2020.
Build Max's deck.
Yes.
Is a challenge.
So I gave them some rules. It either has to be Rakdos or Gruul.
Okay.
Because those are the two colors I don't play or have had bad luck with in the past. I gave them a budget restriction.
Okay.
It said pretty much no expensive RL cards, stuff like that.
Sure.
And I said all the lists have to be submitted by the third week in January.
Nice.
And the goal is I'm going to build it.
Okay.
I'm going to tune it every set. I'll swap cards out. I'm going to treat it like my real deck. I'm going to play it at every Magic Fest or Command Fest we go to.
All right, nice.
So it'll always be with me. If I sit down and play in a pod with anybody listening to the show, you can ask to play that deck and I will play it.
Excellent.
And then I'm also going to have the listeners sign cards every time I play someone.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea.
a memory thing.
Very cool.
But the biggest thing is at the end of the year, the final list is going to get cloned, essentially, and I'm going to build a second copy and give it away to one of our patron supporters at the start of 2021.
That's an awesome idea.
There you go.
Very cool. Excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing what that winds up being picked. I did see one troll deck someone put together for you.
And it actually is really good. I've been watching it. I'm really interested in that deck.
Okay, all right. Well, so about a month we'll review what those are.
Yes.
And hopefully Chris will be back and healthy by then.
Yeah.
But we have a couple more guests lined up. We won't spoil who they are until it gets a little bit closer. But next week and the week after, I think we have a couple people potentially lined up as well. So
yeah, if not, it might be us two, and then we'll kick off guests in the new year. I really don't know.
All right, we'll figure it out.
Yes.
Any other business or housekeeping to take care of here before I jump into this deck tech?
I have a funny story about the recording with Charlotte, the show that came out earlier this week.
Right.
So Charlotte's in Finland.
Yep.
So we recorded over our lunch hour here.
Right, because it was like 8 o'clock her time, I think,
yes.
then?
So typically when we record on Thursdays, I have a beer. Like I'm always down here with a beer.
Sure.
So I got home. I rushed home from work, grabbed my laptop, went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, walked down here, fired everything up, and I opened the beer. I'm like, I have to go back to work. I can't drink this. So I wasted an entire beer.
Oh, man.
Because I thought I was in my habit. Like, oh, my recording, crack a beer.
I was going to say you got I was waiting for you to be like, I got halfway through it and realized, and then like, at that point, I might as well finish it.
I just brushed my teeth really well.
Right. Oh, well, what a waste of beer.
Yeah, it's okay. It was kind of old anyways.
All right, I like it. I didn't even think of that because I think on the air I mentioned the story of me actually getting out of my pajamas and getting dressed for it. So taking our business seriously around here, apparently.
I guess.
Speaking of business here, we have a patron supporters deck to look at. Sam's Big Pig Ilharg deck. Should we do this?
Let's do it.
All right. So Sam writes in, my meta is reasonably powerful, and most decks win through 2-card combos that they often race to. There's a few Battlecruiser-style decks, but they're still around 7 to 9 in power level. My deck is one of the few that actually focuses on combat, step, and attacking. The goal of the deck is to get Illharg into play ASAP, put some big monsters into play, and smash face. Sam wants to be as fast as possible at the gate and deal as much damage as quickly as possible. They've chosen to play what they think are fair beaters, so there's no Eldrazi or anything like that in the deck, and there's a few reasonable extra combat steps to help boost the attack as much as possible.
Yeah, most of the creatures they are running have enter the battlefield effects that Illharg allows to repeat by bringing them back to their hand.
Yeah.
So cards like Panharmonicon and Helm of the Host are also in the deck to help enable those ETBs more often. The main weakness of the deck is that it just gets hated out of games immediately. They don't think what they're doing is more powerful than their opponents, but it's definitely faster. If they're attacking for 10 plus damage on turn 3 or 4, people turn on them and they die quickly.
Okay.
Another weakness is card draw. They've tried the impulse draw in the past and it's been lackluster.
That makes sense in this deck too.
Yes.
I get that.
They need cards in their hand, so they always have something for Illharg to drop in.
They say it can be hard for them to hang in late game if the board side has been dealt with, since casting big beaters isn't as impressive as bringing them in for free with a pig. And the deck is all foil, so budget is kind of whatever. Any card recommendation doesn't have to be available in foil, but it helps if they are, so I get that.
Me too.
They don't like tutors or fast mana outside Soul Ring, just so we know. All right. That's pretty reasonable to work with here.
Oh, yeah.
So let's start out. Why don't you read Illharg to us here, Max? It's a relatively new card, but we might as well refresh listeners that don't remember precisely how it works.
Yeah. Illharg the Raze-Boar is 3 red for a legendary creature, Boar God. Its power and toughness is 6/6. It has trample. When Illharg the Raze-Boar attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, and then return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And then, like all the other gods from War of the Spark, when Illharg dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it on top, third from the top of their owner's library.
Yes, which with being your commander probably doesn't happen too much, unless maybe Illharg's been killed 5 times and you're really trying to avoid the command tax.
Right.
But I would guess it probably doesn't happen that often. This is a good example of a deck where the average CMC is a little bit misleading because it's like 4/2-ish. But you're casting a lot of this stuff for free. A lot of that is because these creatures are 6 or 7 mana-ish. And when you're not casting them, it becomes far less relevant. So that's probably not a huge deal here. Let's start off looking at lands first. What's the mana base? What do you think of the mana base, Max?
This is pretty solid for a mono red deck. We have 28 snow-covered mountains. There's a Valkut. There's Nykthos. There's Lotus Field. A couple draw lands like Forgotten Cave and Cryptic Caves, along with Ancient Tomb and Hanweir Battlements for the haste.
Which I think is probably really useful in this deck.
I would hope so.
All right, is there anything you like or dislike or just want to talk about here among this land list?
I think he could use, like you mentioned, haste is important in this deck.
Yes.
As we were saying, Chris is upstairs, so actually Chris helped me with some of these notes.
Okay.
So he's here in spirit, for real.
Absolutely.
Haste is huge for Ilharg. You want him coming down and swinging that turn. You don't want to wait around.
Right.
Because it will get destroyed. We had an Ilharg deck in our shop for a little bit, and the same thing happened.
Yep.
So my recommendations would be Hall the Bandit Lord.
Okay.
There's no life gain in this deck, but at 3 life, knowing that that could make the difference of taking out a player.
And if it's a fast meta with a lot of combo decks, you're not probably getting worked down piece by piece. Anyway, You're going to die whether you're at 40, you're going to die whether you're at 5.
Yes. The other one being Flamekin Village.
Yeah.
There are a handful of elementals in this deck, so there is a small percentage chance that will come in untapped.
Yeah. But even if it doesn't, it's probably still really worth it.
Yeah. I mean, if it's in your first 2 or 3 turns, it's fine, I think.
Yeah. And, Forgotten Cave is already in here. And when we talked to Charlotte, she didn't really have a problem with those scry lands coming into play tap. But, that's, I think, a really smooth replacement, particularly for Flamekin Village. Even if it comes in tapped, you're playing a non-basic that comes into play tapped with both of them. And I think the upside of being able to give Illharg haste versus the upside of cycling it away and getting one draw out of it. I think it's the haste is worth a lot more to you in this deck.
Yes.
So those are ones. My notes here, I have Forgotten Cave into Flamekin Village and probably run Hall of the Bandit Lord too.
Yeah.
Because like I said, one of the biggest problems is people targeting out Illharg, and having it sit around for a full turn gives everyone a chance to do that. Whereas if you can just drop it, swing, boom, that makes a big difference. One I'll mention, I don't know if it's worth running here, is Scrying Sheets. Because there's already a bunch of snowlands in this deck. Scrying Sheets is a snowland itself, and you can tap it, look at the top card of your library. If that card is snow, you can reveal it and put it into your hand. And that's really it. It taps for a colorless too. So there's not a lot of downside in this deck, and if you happen to have mana left over, you've got a roughly 1 in 4 chance of drawing a card. It's not amazing. I've ran it in a couple different decks before, monocolor decks, and it's never blown me away. But some people swear by it, and there's not a ton of downside to it either. So if you already have all the snowlands in here, it's something to maybe consider. How about the enchantment suite, Max? What do we have here?
There are 4 enchantments. So we have Aggravated Assault, Fervor, Tectonic Reformation, and Warstorm Surge.
So Fervor's one more haste enabler. I don't think I want to touch that. Warstorm Surge makes sense with all these beater creatures too.
Yeah.
When a creature comes into play, you deal damage equal to their power to a target player.
Target creature or player.
So you can use them for removal too if you need to.
Get rid of a blocker.
I think there's a few things I could see running here, like Gratuitous Violence, where Ancient's Tread gives you, it's basically a worse version of that card. It's 1 less, it's 4 in a red, and it deals 5 damage when a creature 5 or greater comes into play. So you don't get to do 7 or 8 off the huge creature, but 5 is still something.
Yeah.
So maybe that, but I think Sam is trying to do most of their damage and most of their abilities off creatures because of the Illharg thing. So I don't think they want to run too many of these enchantments. Those are 2 I would maybe look at, but I don't know if I would tweak too much there.
Yeah, I definitely had Gratuitous Violence on my list. Another one being Berserker's Onslaught, giving all your creatures double strike.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing that Illharg has Trample, that just works very well.
That's really true. That's a good point.
And I have a few others that I think would make this deck work a little better.
Okay.
The first being Goblin War Drums, just giving all of your creatures menace.
Okay.
Because, they can still block whatever you dropped off of Illharg.
Right.
So making sure they need to have 4 blockers now versus 2 is huge.
Yeah.
And it's only 3 mana, I think, to cast. So it's a cheap inclusion CMC-wise.
Yeah.
My other 2 are for the fact that he plays in a more powerful... They play in a more powerful meta combo focus. The first being Stranglehold.
Okay.
If they're going for those 2-card combos as fast as they can, whether it's through draw or even tutors,
right,
that will stop that.
Absolutely.
The second one being Blood Moon.
Yeah, I mean, if you are playing a competitive meta, and the more competitive the meta gets, number one, the better Blood Moon kind of gets.
Yes.
But also the less people tend to care if you're playing Blood Moon.
Yeah.
And if it's a competitive meta, then people probably aren't going to necessarily have a problem with it.
No. And it's also one more thing they have to get, through to do their combo.
Right.
If they need, blue mana and, whatever, and they're making mountains, they need to get rid of that Blood Moon that slows their combo down.
Listen, I don't like Blood Moon. I don't want to have to deal with a Blood Moon, I'm not going to lie. However, when someone plays a Winter Orb, it has, nothing I've done with my deck changes the fact that Winter Orb is a really difficult card to play through and it slows the game down. When someone plays a Blood Moon and it screws me, 99% of the time it's because I've built a greedy mana base. And if
no, not you.
Right. But it's kind of your own fault. Sometimes, absolutely, are you going to be running 18 basics in a deck, and you just so happen to open with 4 non-basics, and someone drops a Blood Moon, and you're like, ugh. I mean, that absolutely will happen because the odds of mathematics work in weird ways, and that's just going to occur once in a while. But most of the time, when a Blood Moon absolutely shuts your deck down, or a back to basics or whatever, it's your own fault. And it actually happened to me this week. I think we talked about it on the previous show with Charlotte.
Correct.
I got shut down in a game by back to basics. It was absolutely my fault. It was a deck that has 10 basics in it, and I had none of them, and that's on me.
It happens. I mean,
Yes.
that's the variance of this game.
Yes. So I would say you shouldn't feel bad about running Blood Moon. Now maybe Sam is in a meta where they are looking at decks that are they're already built to deal with Blood Moons. Maybe it's not worth running in that case.
Very
I don't know.
possible.
But that's something I would consider. And if you're not running it because you feel bad about it, I don't think you should in a competitive meta for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at the sorceries here, Max.
Okay. We have 7 of them. We have Blasphemous Act, Faithless Looting, Hour of Devastation, Relentless Assault, Throes of Chaos, Vandal Blast, and World at War.
So Blasphemous Act is a really good board wipe. Hour of Devastation actually is kind of clever because it's a board wipe. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn, and it deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolus planeswalker, so most planeswalkers. But Illharg's a 6/6, so it gets underneath Illharg. It's going to wipe the board and leave your commander out there the vast majority of the time. I like that. I'm not a fan of the card in general, but I like it in this deck.
Yeah, I like it in this deck, and for all we know, they play in a combo means typically planeswalkers.
Yes.
If it's an answer to planeswalkers, I love it.
And a lot of creatures that tend to be not big.
Right.
Because they're utility creatures doing stuff, so that's probably a really good board wipe in that environment. Vandal Blast, always useful. And again, Vandal Blast, I think, gets better the more tight your meta gets because people then lean heavier into mana rocks and that kind of thing. So that's great there. Throes of Chaos is just a card advantage piece in this deck. And Worlds at War is an extra combat step
Yes.
card. So I'm a fan of that as well, particularly because you get to use it twice.
That's right. It has Rebound.
Yes, it does. And also Faithless Looting, like a Chris Digger special.
Yes.
Chris is a fan of that card, and it's pretty solid here. It's not as good. Faithless Looting isn't as good in Commander as it was in Modern because it's now banned. But it's solid enough. You have to draw 2 cards. Hopefully, you're then going to pitch 2 lands and keep the 2 you got, and then if you flash it back, that's fairly solid there as well. Any sorceries you have that you like or dislike here, Max?
I like what's in the deck right now. I think it just needs more draw. And
Yes.
Sam says that in his notes to us. So seeing more stuff like Faithless Looting, Tormenting Voice, Cathartic Reunion, hoping that you're going to pitch maybe some artifacts that are just utility or lands that are not necessary anymore.
Yes. Yeah, there's not a lot. In red, you're dealing with a lot of the kind of looting effects, so you're not really getting card advantage, but you're hopefully pitching away lands to get a few things. So,
Yeah.
like Magmatic Insight is a good enough card. There's a few of those you could run there as well. I've got a few I'll bring up when we go to the instance.
Yep.
The couple things I would mention as possibilities here, I'm surprised Seize the Day isn't in the deck as an extra combat step. It's only 1 creature, so it will only work on Illharg. But It does have flashback, so you can use it twice in a single turn. It's 3 mana to start with, and I think 4 to use the flashback version of it.
Yep.
So 7 mana total. If you've hit somebody once with Ilharg, and it comes back to your turn and you have Seize the Day in the hand, the fact that you can swing and hit them, cast it, swing and hit them again with Ilharg, and cast it off flashback kills a person.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
that's 6, 12, 24. So if you've got one strike in at the Ilharg, even if you're not getting the extra attacks for the creatures you put into play, you also get additional Ilharg procs for each of those, even if the creatures don't untap for the extra combat steps.
Yeah.
That is one I would at least give a look to. Mana Geyser.
It's like you're reading my notes.
Nice. Mana Geyser is great, and I think it addresses one of the problems with rebuilding here. If you're on like turn 7 and you draw a Mana Geyser, very often that's just 14 mana.
If not more.
If not more, right. Like right. I've seen Mana Geysers tap for over 20 before.
Yeah, same here.
But like it's almost never less than 10.
Yeah, you get what you invest into it.
Yes. And that lets you cast that Illharg that normally you're like, oh, that's going to be my whole turn is casting Illharg and passing. That Mana Geyser lets you cast Illharg and still have 10 mana left to do other things.
Yes.
It's absolutely fantastic. I think it's really underplayed in Commander, and I think this is a really good deck for it. Insult to Injury is one I would like. It is a card from Amonkhet that has, I've now forgot the ability in your graveyard that has the 2 halves. Aftermath, there we go. The first half is the most important one, I think, in this deck. It just basically deals double damage. So if a source deals damage, it deals double damage for the turn.
And damage can't be prevented.
Right, which also includes fogs.
Yeah.
So again, if you happen to have double strikeout, and there's quite a few things that do double strike in this deck, that kills somebody because Illharg goes from 6 to 12 to 24. In addition to putting a double damage on whatever creature you put into play with Illharg. And the nice thing about damage doublers is they stack. Like if you've got 4 things that do double strike in play, that's just still one source of double strike.
Right.
If you have 4 ways to double your damage in play, that just doubles it and doubles the double and double. It all adds up. So I'm a big fan of those damage doublers, and that would be one I would consider in this deck too.
Yeah. I have one other one along the lines of the extra combat steps, and I think Fury the Horde would be good in this deck. It's 7 mana, but you can exile 2 red cards from your hand rather than pay the cost.
And if you kill somebody with it, that's worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like Fury of the Horde as well. And again, when you're running double strike and running damage doublers, you are going to frequently kill people with those cards.
Yes.
All right, let's pop over to the instance now.
There's only 2 of them.
Yeah.
Chaos Warp and Savage Beating, and that's another extra combat step?
Extra combat step or double strike.
Ooh.
Or both. You can
Because it has entwine. Yep.
So there's only 2 of those. That's pretty easy to talk about. I do have a few suggestions here. The first would be Thrill of Possibility, maybe. It's the Tormenting Voice at instant speed. It's just a better Tormenting Voice. Lets you 2 mana, discard, and draw 2.
I think out of all of those looting type draws, this is the one I would for sure add to the deck.
After Faithless Looting, that's probably, I think, the second best one because it's instant speed.
Yes.
So that's one I would consider. But here's where I think you might have a solution for some of your draw. Reverberate and Fork are 2 I would maybe consider here. They're both 2 mana to copy a spell. I think it's meta dependent. But if you are really playing in a somewhat aggressive meta, I would bet you have players who are routinely casting that Factor of Fiction or routinely drawing cards off spells. You're not seeing people playing Greed in a combo meta for the most part, and I don't think you're seeing people playing like big, huge, splashy creatures that draw you cards. I would guess they're doing a lot of draw off of spells. I could be wrong, but I think Sam would probably know best and would take a look at that. If you're copying a Sign in Blood with a Fork, that's the same exact mana they paid for that Sign in Blood.
Right.
They're paying 2 to draw 2 cards, and that's that's like the worst case scenario for the most part if you're copying a draw spell. Now, it takes a little practice to look around, but and figure out, is it worth leaving 2 mana open? I think someone's going to cast a draw spell. I think it's temperamental and it requires you to actually be a little bit cautious. But I think they would be well served to take a look at those 2 because they have the option to copy someone's draw spell, and Fork and Reverberate both also have the option to Someone casts a removal spell, you copy the removal spell and hit, their own creature. Someone casts, there's a lot of things you can copy with those two spells. They're super efficient at 2 mana, and having the option to copy that big draw spell, I think is worth for 2 mana at instant speed.
What I really like about that is that, like you said, they're 2 mana.
Yes.
And in this deck, nobody's going to think that's what that 2 mana is going to be for.
Absolutely.
People are going to be, there are only 2 mana up, so it's not Chaos Warp.
Right, exactly.
And they're going to move on with their day.
Yep. So I like those two kind of as instant speed options for draw. A couple that I wouldn't run all 4 of these, but I'm going to suggest them as cards to maybe look at. First is Mercadia's Downfall. All creatures you control get +X/+O till end of turn, where X is a number of non-basic lands target opponent controls.
Ooh.
So pretty frequently it's just going to give your, commander and the other creature, because you can cast it after the other one comes into play, +4, +5 or something. But there's those situations where it's turn 11 or something, and one person has 10 non-basics in play, and your commander gets +10/+O, and if you have an extra combat step or a damage doubler, that just blows somebody up. There is Overblaze, which is 3 in a red, and these are all instants. Each time target permanent would deal damage to a creature or player, it deals double this turn. So again, it's one more way, and it's an instant speed combat trick, so you can wait to see if Illharg's getting through, and then just double the damage. And if you have an extra combat step, that stays on Illharg, and you kill somebody. Or if you have double strike, same thing.
Ooh.
Rush of Blood is 2 in a red. Target creature gets +X/+O till end of turn, where X is its power. So you're doubling Illharg from 6 to 12. Double strike or a damage double or an extra combat step, that kills somebody. And the last one is Fatal Frenzy. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and +X/+O, where X is its power. Same thing, damage doubler or double strike or an extra combat step, you're going to kill somebody. And the downside to Fatal Frenzy is you have to then sacrifice at end of turn. But if you kill somebody, it's maybe worth it. And if you happen to decide to put it on one of the creatures instead of Illharg that comes into play with Illharg, you can just line up those triggers so it bounces back to hand before it would get destroyed from Fatal Frenzy. So I don't think the deck wants probably all 4 of those.
But a couple.
I think, a combat trick that turns Illharg into a killing machine to just one-shot somebody, I think is probably worth maybe taking a look at.
Yeah.
So, do you have any more instants, Max?
I have one, and then I went purely defensive.
Okay.
Pyroblast.
Yeah, I mean, if you are playing in a combo meta,
being able to counter a blue draw spell, or that Rift, or that Teferi that someone might drop. It's for 1 mana, it is worth it.
If people are winning with combo, there's about a 95% chance it's blue.
Yes.
So that gives you a way to stop it. Yeah, I mean, Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast are both really, really good cards.
Yeah.
All right. Artifacts.
There's a handful of them
there. There is. There's even an Ugin the Spirit Dragon in here as a Planeswalker. I would guess...
Not the Spirit Dragon.
Sorry. Ugin the Ineffable.
Yes.
As a Planeswalker, I would guess in part to make artifacts cost 2 less.
And the draw off those manifest
you make those spirits
tokens,
that draw you a card. That's not nothing either.
And it is removal.
That's true. Yeah, which is useful in red.
Okay, so 22 artifacts. Commander's Sphere, Conjure's Closet, Embercleave, Endless Atlas, Everflowing Chalice, Extraplanar Lens, Hedron Archive, Helm of the Host, Lightning Greaves, Mind Stone, Panharmonicon, Ruby Medallion, Sensei's Divining Top, Soul Ring, Strionic Resonator, Sundial of the Infinite, Swiftfoot Boots, Immortal Sun, Thran Dynamo, Tome of Legends, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Whisper Silk Cloak.
Whew.
Got them all.
Well, my mono-white deck runs a similar amount of artifacts, not because it's an artifact deck, just because when you're in mono-white or mono-red, that's how you have to ramp. That's how you have to draw. So that all is logical in this kind of a deck. I completely get it. There's quite a few mana rocks, and a lot of the mana rocks are the ones that can be sacrificed to draw cards when you no longer need them. That makes sense. The problem with that is if Illharg's getting hit a lot, I would bet Sam finds themselves in a position where it's tough to decide which you want to do more, draw the 2 cards, or leave the rock up in case Illharg dies next turn. But I don't know if there's a way around that. It just is what it is.
Yeah. Sam did say Soul Ring is about as fast as the mana they want.
Yeah.
My opinion, of course, it's just my opinion. It doesn't mean anything. If you want to be more faster than your opponents are already, you probably should look into adding Crypt or Vault.
Again, if you're playing in a fast combo meta, I don't think you should feel bad about running Crypt or Vault. You know, I don't think you want to go get a Mox Diamond or something.
Or an LED or anything like that.
Yeah, but like I think Crypt and Vault, not cheap cards by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're not running them because you don't want to, overpower somebody, if it's really a combo meta and you're in mono red, that's perfectly legitimate and fair to do. But I get it.
Totally get the self rule there.
Yes, completely. So there's not much else I would say that you could do with the mana rocks as they stand, but I do have a couple of suggestions here. Mask of Memory.
Is that the one where if the creature is blocked, draw 2 cards?
Nope, that is Infiltration Lens. Mask of Memory it's 2 to cast, 1 to equip. When the creature deals combat damage, draw 2 cards, then discard a card.
Gotcha.
So you, again, hopefully will draw 2 good cards and pitch a land, but if you've got double strike, that's going to trigger twice. If you have extra combat steps, it's going to trigger multiple times. And we have a player in our meta who plays an Aurelia deck, the original Aurelia, who has the extra combat step baked in there, and she regularly is able to draw multiple, I've seen her with a double striking Aurelia, and she's drawing 8 cards in a turn off of that, and then pitching 3 lands and something she didn't need. That's amazing in Boros. And you're probably not going to necessarily do that very frequently in this deck because Illharg doesn't have the extra combat step automatically, but I would bet, even if all you're getting is 2 and 1 is 2 pitch 1, in mono red that's pretty decent.
Yeah.
Let alone if you happen to have double strike or an extra combat step and you can do it twice. That's one I would consider, particularly because it's only 1 to equip. So when Illharg gets killed and you bring Illharg back into play, it's only 1 mana to put it back on. So I like Mask of Memory there. I think Memory Jar is maybe even worth running.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but it's I think around $20-ish. I think from the Vault foil is 30 to 40.
From the Vault one is 22 according to Scryfall, and the Urza's version is 17.
Okay. And what Mask Memory does, it's an old card. It's 5 mana, and you tap it and sacrifice it. All players, not just you, exile their hands and draw 7 cards. And at the end of turn, you discard your hand and bring that exiled hand back to play. So you get your old hand back. So basically for that duration of a turn, you have a new hand. Particularly in Illharg deck where the problem with Memory Jar, such as it is, it's still a great card, but when you cast it for 5 mana, you usually don't want to crack it that turn because you've already spent 5 mana. You want to hope it survives turn on the board, it comes back to you, and then you crack it and get to play with a new hand. Everyone else probably doesn't do much. They might have an instant they can cast, but it affects them much less than it affects you.
Right.
The beauty of it in Illharg is because you're casting creatures for free, it gives you a crack at 7 new creatures that you're casting for free with Illharg.
Yeah.
So I think Memory Jar might do work here as a kind of pseudo draw as well. I do have a question about Whisper Silk Cloak and to a lesser degree Lightning Greaves. They do prevent you from targeting your commander with a couple spells in this deck that do care about targeting it. I think Lightning Greaves is still, that's a problem with Lightning Greaves in general, but usually you don't care too much because it's free to move around and equip. But Whisper Silk isn't, and because they both grant Shroud, it can be tricky with other things. So I was just wondering if that might be a situation where you'd be better off with like Champion's Helm or Mask of Avacyn that also grant hexproof, but they don't grant Shroud, so you can still target your own creature. Particularly because Illharg has Trample already, the unblockability on Whisper Silk is probably less important than it would be in a different deck.
Right.
So that's something I would just mention and consider. That is, I think, the only real thing I had for artifacts. What do you have? Do you want to talk about here, Max?
I really don't have anything for artifacts.
Okay.
I think this is fine. I agree with what you're saying about the stuff that gives Shroud. Maybe look at putting other hexproof enablers in over the Shroud.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to get haste and something.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think you take what you can get. and see what happens.
Yeah, I think Lightning Greaves is just so good that you just are like, well, I'm just running Lightning Greaves, and occasionally it'll bone me, but I don't think Whisper Silk Cloak is quite as amazing as Lightning Greaves, and I'm not sure if that trade-off is worth it. But maybe. There is a good bit of like Endless Atlas. If Sam wasn't running Endless Atlas, I would absolutely recommend it. If they weren't already running Tome of Legends, I'd recommend it. I'd probably also be recommending the Immortal Sun, but those are all three already in here.
Yep.
And generally speaking, like I've been running Tome of Legends in my Zero deck, mono white, and I've had Endless Atlas in there since it came out as well. Both those have been fantastic in a monocolor white deck. Red is very similar. I guarantee they're great cards. So if anyone out there is listening, if you are playing mono white or mono red or even Boros, those are two really, really solid cards for card draw in those colors.
I do have a suggestion from Chris.
Yeah.
Just came in. One being
is he like listening upstairs and throwing suggestions?
I'm getting DMs on Twitter from him. So the first is an artifact, Perforos's Hammer. Just another haste enabler, and it does make some bodies if you need them.
That's true, yeah.
The other one is, we're going to quickly flash back to the enchantments. He recommends War Cadence.
Can only be blocked by...
Nope. X and red creatures can't block unless their controllers pay X.
Okay,
so it's like
gotcha.
it's like the blue-red War Crimes? The War Tax? Is that the blue one where it's the same thing?
Yeah. Okay. I like that. That's I can picture it. I think it's Mercadian Mask, right? It's like a goblet on the art, I think.
It got reprinted in a couple of the Commander sets. X and a red. This turn, creatures can't block unless their controller pays X for each blocking creature they control.
Okay. So it's one more way to poke through with Illharg and poke through with your other creature as well.
Right.
Okay. Last, but certainly not least in this deck, where there's 27 of them, creatures.
Ay caramba.
So there's Avatar of Slaughter, Balefire Dragon, Boggarden Hellkite, Breaker of Armies, Burnished Heart for a little bit of ramp, Cavalier of Flame, one of the elementals Max mentioned earlier, Chancellor of the Forge, Combustible Gear Hulk, Crater Hellion, Desolation Twin that brings in a second twin with it that doesn't go away when it bounces back to your hand. Dockside Distortionist, a great piece of ramp in red. Duplicant, a great repeatable piece of removal. Atali Primal Storm, who is just busted. That's a fantastic value in this deck. Fnatic Amogus, Generator Servant for some ramp. Handweir Garrison, I'm guessing, it's not a bad card, but maybe to occasionally get to flip with battlements.
And it makes the bodies
That's
every
true.
time it comes in. It's making bodies.
Hellkite Tyrant, Infernal Titan, Malingus, which is just going to kill somebody, Meteor Golem for some removal, Neheb Dreadhorde Champion, and Neheb the Eternal, both of which are going to make some mana, Solemn Simulacrum, Steel Hellkite, some more removal, Thundermaw Hellkite, Urabrask the Hidden for haste and slowing other people up, and Zealous Conscripts to seal some stuff. And it's an ETB and it's removable. So yeah, I like all of those. I don't know what I don't think any of these are things. Actually, if I was going to suggest one to maybe, I don't even know about that. I was going to say maybe you don't run Burnished Heart.
I have a few here.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with Burnished Heart because unlike Solemn Simulacrum, it's not an ETB.
Right.
So you have to have that 3 mana to sacrifice the creature.
Solemn you can repeatedly reuse. Burnished Heart is just a one and done.
Yeah. So maybe it's for, that early, get it out, get your lands, then cast Ilharg. Maybe. A lot of magical Christmas land going on right there.
Yes.
I don't like Desolation Twin. I understand 90% of the use of this card is just dropping it off of Ilharg and you have a 10/10 beater.
Okay.
The token is a cast trigger.
Oh, it is?
Yes, all these new Eldrazi's are pretty much cast triggers.
All right, yeah. So it's just a 10/10 beater.
Yeah, it's just a 10/10 beater.
I think I mentioned, that it brought a twin in. I'm wrong. So then I like it a lot less, and I agree with you. That's a good point.
Yeah, I get a point. My suggestions would be run cards that are pretty much in parity with something else. So Sam's running Inferno Titan.
Yep.
Burning Sun's Avatar is the Dino Inferno Titan.
Right.
Run that as well. I think Torbrand needs to be in this deck.
Yes.
Every creature is red, so you're automatically looking at another 2 points of damage.
Yep.
On everything.
I like Torbrand as well.
A couple, a recommendation from Chris. Seasoned Pyromancer from Modern Horizons.
Because that casts out of somebody else's graveyard, right?
No, so
is it yours?
You cast it, and it comes in and it makes the 2 bodies.
That's right.
And then you can exile it from your graveyard for 5 mana to make 2 more bodies.
Okay.
But if you can bring it back to your hand, you're just making chump blockers.
Right. Yes.
And it's very affordable now. It's like $6 versus the $25 it was when it first came out.
What was I thinking of? The red Snapcaster. Someone's yelling at the radio.
I have no idea.
Someone's yelling at the radio right now, but okay.
And then my final one is to help with the card draw.
Okay.
Sandstone Oracle.
Oh, the Sphinx?
The 7-drop Sphinx, where when it ETBs, if target opponent has more cards than you, draw the difference.
And it's an ETB, not a cast trigger.
And it's a 4/4 flyer, so it has some evasion, get some damage in. Those would be my main recommendations for the creatures.
Okay. I had a couple of those in my list, but there's a couple that you did mention. I will throw out here. Actually, that are very similar. Angrath's Marauders and the new Fiendish Duo from Game Nights, both of which make creatures you control deal double damage. So again, it's one of those things where if that comes into play, and no one will see it coming, if that comes into play off of an Illharg and you have a double strike or an extra combat step, somebody's going to die.
Yep.
So I like both of those as well, and it's really useful in this kind of deck, I think, and it's the kind of thing that's going to aggressively allow you to kill players before they can stop you or win the game with their own combo.
Yeah.
All right, Max. What do you think of the deck?
I think it is a lot of fun. We had an Illharg deck in our shop for a while. It was a lot of fun to play against. It was a lot of fun to play in Pilot. I got to do that a couple times. I was saying this to you off air before we started recording. Like, I kind of want to build this deck now.
And I was like, my response was, I kind of do too a little bit. Yeah, I like it a lot. It's very aggressive for red, but it's not goblins. It's not tokens.
And it's not laughless.
And right. And you also don't have to feel like Sam said they didn't run Eldrazi. I don't feel like the deck is missing anything not running Giant Eldrazi.
Chris disagrees with that, but that's Chris. He is the Eldrazi guy.
But no, I like it. You get to run a broad spectrum of creatures that you don't necessarily see a lot. You're going to see really different things every time you play the deck, too.
Right.
I like it.
This deck makes me... This is the type of deck I think about when people say, describe Commander. Because you just get to play big creatures... And you get to cheat them into play.
It's a little bit chaotic because you don't know what they're going to be.
Right.
You're going to get a bit of a different play experience very often. I like Illharg a lot as a commander, and I like the deck.
Yes, awesome. So, Sam, thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon and sending in the deck list. We'll get all your goodies out in the mail in the next coming weeks here.
You bet. Thank you very much. That will wrap up this episode. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod. Our show's edited by Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at WhyIsASquishy1.
No.
You can't find Max there.
That would be really funny, though.
You can find Max at CMDR Central _Max. And you can find Chris upstairs right now finishing up The Mandalorian and also at WhyIsSquishy1. Hope everyone had a good holiday. We'll be back next Monday with a new show. Until then, I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.